Isle of Arran Distillers Limited as a company was established in 1991 by the Curry family, principally by Harold Curry, our founder. Harold had spent his career in the wine and spirits industry, principally with Chivas Brothers, and he had a vision of building his own distillery, and he wanted to do it on the Isle of Arran. He had a deep love for Arran as a place, and he thought it was the ideal place for building a distillery and to bring back distillation back to life on the island, because during the 19th century there were many illicit stills on the island, and there were previously three legally licensed distilleries on Arran as well. So the distillery, they started building in Lochranza in December 1994, and the building was ready, and the first production took place on the 29th of June 1995. That's when the first spirit ran through, the middle cut was taken from the stills on that day. They built in Lochranza for a number of reasons, principally because of the quality of the water source there. So the water gathers in a small loch up in the mountains called Loch Nadavi. It runs down the mountainside through a series of small waterfalls and through a stream called the Isen Birich, which is continually purifying the water. And then we take it from there for our production. So it's a very clean, natural water, perhaps the most natural water source in the whole Scotch whisky industry, and ideal for making whisky, ideal for making an unpeated single malt in particular. This year we celebrated our 25th anniversary, and although the Curry family are no longer directly involved with the business, we are owned by a group of independent shareholders, and it's very important that we remain an independent Scotch whisky company. That gives us the flexibility to make decisions of our own choosing, and to make fast decisions as well, and do what we think is both right for us as a business and for the wider island community. Harold was quite a visionary at that time, because the mid-1990s was quite a tough time for the Scotch whisky industry. It was going through a small recession at that time, and a lot of distilleries were closing. Nobody was building new distilleries, so it was very much swimming against the tide. But since then, of course, there has been a boom in new distilleries, small craft distilleries, and we very much see ourselves as being at the forefront of this new wave of distilleries that have emerged, both in Scotland and around the world. We kind of see ourselves as being the first of these new distilleries to reach maturity, and we've got this milestone of 25 years under our belts, and we will have a 25-year-old single malt release for the first time later this year. So we feel we've always been a pioneering company, and as well as our distillery in Lochranza, we also decided to build a second distillery on Arran, because Arran is our home. And this time we built it on the south end of the island in the village of Lag, which was the home of the most recent licensed distillery, which closed in 1839, I believe. So we built down at Lag, and we wanted Lag to be a completely unique distillery, very different to Lochranza. So it makes a very heavily peated single malt, but malted barley is peated to a specification of 50 ppm, 50 parts per million. So it's a heavy, very characterful, smoky, peaty spirit that we're producing that will mature into, we believe, into one of the finest whiskies in the world.
Isle of Arran Distillers Limited is a small independent company, and we're very proud of that fact. It's a small business full of passionate people. It's very important that everyone is allowed to have a say in basically what happens in the company. In big companies, everything really comes from the top down the way, but it's small independent, that means everything comes from the bottom up the way, which means that everybody from the very bottom of the tree is given a say in basically quality control, and their opinion matters. Even though we're small, and it's quite young, we're still very traditional in what we do. We use Oregon pine washbacks in both sites because we feel that gives us the best fermentation and the best quality new spirit. From my own point of view, down here at Lag, I was given the opportunity to basically design my own distillery, and there's very few people in the whisky industry who be able to do that. Everything's designed to give us a very, very good high quality spirit. We're also experimental in different ways because we use different casks and everything's done basically at the distillery. I do all the blending there so that everything that's going for the bottling, the quality of the spirit and everything is actually done in Arran, and it's not done in our laboratory in the mainland everywhere. So that's really important for us, that local input is there. We have built 3 new warehouses at Lochranza. We've got 3 warehouses at Lag, and we're planning in the next 6 months to build another 3 warehouses down at Lag. So it's very important for us that all our production and all our maturation is done on the island. As a company, we like to experiment. We've been experimenting with different casks. We're also going to be looking at different, down for Lag in particular, looking at different peats. And where the peat comes from, we're looking to experiment with Irish peat and possibly Islay peat as well. In the longer term, we're probably going to get some Arran peat, so that we're going to have the barley growing in Arran, because we already get about 120 tonne of barley growing in Arran. So if we can get peat to go with that, that'll be a very interesting experiment for everybody.
Due to the Highland fault line running through the middle of Arran, the northern end of the island soon provides a much different holiday experience to the southern end. In the northern end of the island, you could go hiking surrounded by golden eagles and deer. In the southern end of the island, you could walk along the beaches accompanied by seals and dolphins. All of these factors create a beautiful holidaying experience. The fact that we have a distillery in the north end and the fact we have a distillery in the south end allows you to drive up and down and see the entire beauty of Arran in its whole.
The distillery here at Lochranza is located in the north of the island. It's nestled in the foot of mountains. At the distillery itself, we have a visitor centre. It's one of the busiest visitor centres in the whole of Scotland. Attracts people from all over the world. We also have a cafe as well, which has panoramic views out over the hills. We have a fantastic wood policy here at Lochranza. We use the best casks that we can. We only use casks twice. This ensures that we maintain that quality in the end product. The casks that we use from Europe come from Spain, Portugal, France and Italy. The casks we get from the States come direct as well. Recently we went through rebranding, and the new design is a modern, clear style which complements and shows how far the distillery has come in 25 years.
We're down here at Lag Distillery on the south end of the Isle of Arran. Historically, the south end of Arran was famous for its both illicit and illicit distilling. Illicit distilling obviously being the lifeblood of the local farmers here for hundreds of years. And back in the 1830s, it was the site of the very last illicit distillery on the Isle of Arran before Lochranza came to be in 1995. Because the area's rich history in previous distilling, we thought it was the perfect place for us to build our brand new distillery, focused on heavily peated malt rather than non-peated malt. So back in 2017, the ground was purchased and we started the groundworks, foundation, everything from that date onwards. The first things built on site though were the 3 brand new warehouses for the company. These were not just for the current distillery Lag, but it was for the previous distillery Lochranza, because Lochranza had almost run out of space. So the 3 warehouses were erected on site before the actual distillery was even built. And then the distillery came shortly afterwards. 2019, the doors were finally opened for production, and we actually produced our very first spirit on site at 14:35 on 19th of March 2019, and we've been constantly on the go since then. Aside from the distillery, we actually had quite a lot of acreage to use when we bought the site. We also acquired ourselves an orchard. We recently planted up to 3,000 trees, and we're very excited to use them for the future along with the Lag product. We're definitely going to produce a cider and maybe move on to some kind of apple gin or apple brandy from there. The site is also next to local barley fields owned by local farmers, and they will be supplying us with the barley over the next few years so that we can produce 100% Arran spirit. From the get-go, the actual building was designed in such a way so to not just focus on one aspect of the distillery. Most distilleries are quite old buildings that focus mostly just on production and just had visitor centres added on top. But Lag Distillery was actually designed so that both visitor centre and distillery would have equal footing and be almost married together. So that's why it's like a seamless build from one end to the next. The distillery doesn't seem to stop. The main difference between Lag Distillery and our sister distillery Lochranza is that we focus on heavily peated malt. Lochranza traditionally is an unpeated distillery, but for 1 month of the year for the last 10 years they've been producing low peated and heavily peated malt for what's known as the Macri Moor range. We've kind of taken that responsibility from our sister distillery to allow them to focus on non-peated, while we will focus on the heavily peated side of the malt industry. Lag Distillery goes through 4 tonnes of malted barley a day. We have a 4-tonne semi-lauter mash tun, and from the 4 tonnes we produce 20,000 litres of wort, which then becomes wash after 75 kilograms of yeast are added. From that 20,000 litres of wash, we prefer 72 hours minimum fermentation. It can go slightly longer, but 72 is our gold standard. We don't want to go any less than that. So those 20,000 litres of wash are then distilled over a 16-hour period inside our wash still. Our wash still is a very large bulbous onion shape, and that's what gives us the specific characteristic we're looking for at Lag. It means slightly less copper contact, and this vapour doesn't have to fight too hard to get up over the swan neck and be recondensed. So that gives us the very heavy characters we're looking for. Our spirit still is slightly different in shape from our wash still. It's 7,000 litres, so slightly smaller, and it also has a distinctive lamp glass shape built into it. This allows for slightly more copper contact to try and balance out the very heavy vapours we're going to be getting from the wash still. It does help emphasise that grassy character we're looking for. We allow people to own private casks of Lag. We have a system called the Lag Cask Society, where we allow 700 barrels to be purchased for private owners. And these are all stored inside Lag Warehouse 1 in a specified racking system. About 95% of all the barrels that we use at Lag are ex-bourbon barrels, first fills. The rest are either second fills from Lochranza, usually ones from the previous Stingles cuts, or sherry, some quarter casks, and a few wine casks as well.